Hello and welcome to the BIBA Pod. This podcast is where current insurance industry challenges are discussed ahead of BIBA Conference 2024. The conference theme is What's Next? And in this series we'll be interviewing insurance professionals shaping our future as an industry.
Good morning, David. Thank you very much for joining me on BIBA Pod this morning. It's fabulous to have you here, and I'm really excited about the conversation, which is around the unintended consequences of the changing risk landscape brought on by innovation. So I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say. Welcome to BIBA Pod.
So let's just introduce myself. David Jones, thank you for having me today. My role at QBE is the Director of Underwriting for Property and Package Business, so looking after all of our first-party lines and all of our commercial package insurance across the UK.
Wonderful. So exactly the guy that we need to speak to about this topic. So I've had lots of conversations, as I'm sure you have and most of the listeners have, around innovation and AI and the changing geopolitical environment. We're talking about different behaviours, working from home. We've got wars in Ukraine. We've got general inflation. There's so much stuff going on in our world at the moment, which is having a direct impact on the insurance industry. Talk to me about it. Tell me what your kind of views are and how you see the world panning out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think we already know that the world is continuing getting more and more uncertain. And I know that QBE, we did an uncertainty index a few years ago, and that showed every year the next year is going to have more volatility and more uncertainty. And we've seen that with, as you say, war in Ukraine. We've got the Israel and Gaza conflict. There is geopolitical challenge all over the world. But also against that, there's definitely an undertone of innovation and the challenges that can pose. So we all know about the ESG agenda and climate change commitments that countries around the world have made, as well as entering a new world of the fourth industrial revolution. So first industrial revolution, is the mechanization of processes, then the electrification, then data, and in the fourth we're into kind of the merging of digital and physical and biological systems. So all of that change really brings uncertainty for the insurance landscape as well. If I reflect definitely the last 25 years of my career, all the businesses and trades I used to insure 25 years ago are very different now. And I think there's a stat that 65% of jobs that our children will do actually don't exist today. So the world's continually changing and continually innovating, and that'll just quicken at a pace.
And how quick do you think we are as an industry to keep on top of that very, very fast change?
Well, we kind of, when we talk about our products as an industry, we kind of go back to, the fire rates and marine clauses, and we're definitely backwards looking through the rearview mirror. So I don't think we're as agile as we'd like to be about the new risks that are posed through innovation. And we can already see probably really clear examples where, new risks are posing new challenges to businesses and also how we live our lives. What we've seen probably more recently, is that kind of automation and electrification in the society and our lives. And you only have to look at the Baltimore Bridge collapse, which was an unmanned vessel being piloted autonomously. I don't know what happened, don't know what caused it, but you have to probably ask the question, if somebody had been on the vessel, could they have averted the danger and maybe not collapsed a bridge in one of the busiest ports in the world? So, this innovation can really bring, uncertainty and new and interesting challenges.
So we've kind of touched on this about how that relates to the risk landscape and emerging risks, and you've mentioned the four industrial revolutions, data being a big part of that. We don't have the data to understand these risks, and these risks are coming from every different angle at a rate of knots, pardon the pun. What do we do?
Yeah, I think data is a really interesting point because we're finding our way. If you look at lithium-ion batteries currently, that's a really hot topic for QBE and the insurance industry in a broader context. I think only yesterday there was an e-bike that exploded at a London station. So we're already finding new data points about these hazards and finding out how to manage them. So it's a really evolving state. I think some of the stats we've seen, I think on average 33 lithium-ion battery devices will be in our homes by 2026. And whilst they're purported to be incredibly safe, and they are, but if they are ruptured or they're damaged, they become really volatile and can be quite dangerous. So that's something where data is already emerging and evolving all the time. And probably the biggest area that we'll see battery usage will be in cars, and we already know that to repair an e-vehicle it is much more expensive than a previous combustion engine vehicle. So again, that data landscape's continuing to evolve, giving us new points to look at and new trends to consider in how we price risk. I think with e-vehicles, the inflation challenge is there, but also there's a safety challenge. I don't have an e-vehicle, but I'm told if you get in one, they're a lot torquier and a lot quicker off the pace, off the mark. And actually can challenge drivers in how they drive, and it can be a bit more dangerous. And also there's obviously the impact of vulnerable road users and pedestrians because they're pretty silent. So again, all of these things will just drive more data points and more experience from which we can look at risk and price risk.
And the world we live in actually is so data orientated that the amount of data we can get in the time we can get far surpasses previous years as well. So we've moved on in terms of being able to analyze those data using AI and all of these crazy things. You've mentioned e-vehicles and we've talked about autonomous shipping. What other areas of risk, and I'm thinking particularly around behavioural changes like working from home and things like that, do you see emerging and that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, I think it's probably a testament to how society's changed that we're talking, online over Teams this morning. The kind of proximity of work and home has become really blurred. That's what we've seen. Certainly at QBE, we've fully embraced flexible working. And that means people can kind of fit their working week around their kind of needs, their need to do the job, but also their need for home, and create that balance. And that's fantastic, and it's brilliant, and it gives people huge flexibility and capability to work in the best way possible. But also the challenge there is actually that blurring of home and work, because people definitely feel probably like they never switch off. Their emails are always blinking. And one of the things that we've been thinking about at QBE actually is what causes losses. And outside of kind of climate events, most losses normally stem from somebody somewhere making a mistake. And people don't turn up to work every day to make mistakes. None of it is intentional. But you're more likely to make a mistake or more likely to cause an accident if you've got other things on your mind. So that blurring of home and life and bringing stresses and challenges from our home lives to our work lives actually, again, changes that risk landscape. And we've definitely seen that golden thread of a more mentally resilient or mind health resilient workforce, probably driving a better risk culture for us to ensure, and ideally a better risk quality. So there's those kind of new and emerging golden threads of risk and awareness that we're definitely seeing come through.
I'm quite interested in this particular aspect as a parent, because I don't think it's just home and work that's blurred. I think social media, total connectivity across 25,000. I mean, I don't know about you, but how many times I've looked at my phone and gone, I'm sure there was a message. Was it a message? Was it WhatsApp? Was it Facebook? Was it LinkedIn? Where did that come from? So that level of connectivity is also very much golden threaded through work and home, bringing that even more together. And I think my personal experience is the more balls I'm juggling or the more split my mental ability, the more mistakes I make. And this seems to be a real theme in our current day life across the board. How do we manage that? How do we reduce that risk?
It's we as QB, we can't tell people how to kind of evolve and run their lives to make themselves more mentally resilient. But what we can do is work with the customers that we insure, and we're a business insurer, so we work with our customers to look at the kind of mind health state of their employee workforce, and what active measures the company that we're insuring take it in kind of supporting their employees. So we actually have a proposition called Minds in Business, and that looks directly at that and actually giving insureds a kind of view as to what best practice looks like, in terms of looking after the kind of mind health of their employees, and giving them the support they need. And we'll score people and see how people can progress forwards with benchmarking. But ideally, all we're trying to look at is just creating a more resilient workforce from the kind of blurring of home and life and work, and how that can improve and influence the kind of risk culture of a business. So that's a new proposition from QB that we've launched this year. We're really excited to see it, see how it resonates in terms of conversations with brokers and customers.
Absolutely, and it's another golden thread that weaves through home, work, everything is this kind of mental health resilience and being able to manage the multiple juggling balls that we're all managing at the moment. Can I ask you a little bit about changes in the construction environment and emerging risks that you're seeing there and perhaps the cause of them?
We definitely see innovation in how we live our lives, both in how we get around and how we that kind of social influence we talked on, but also it really influences the world we live in and the world we build for ourselves. And we've seen kind of construction as a big spearhead for that ESG and that environmental concern, looking at new methods of construction and thinking about how to build buildings sustainably and with renewable products. A big one that we're seeing at the moment is cross-laminated timber, so CLT, other people may have heard it called, and that's where you get wood that's latticed over each other and then glued and fixed together, and it's really rigid, it's really strong to build buildings out of, but at its core it's still wood, and that obviously poses a challenge to insurers in terms of potential combustibility of buildings and also what the occupancy of those buildings are. So if you've got a building with industrial processes or heat processes, or even just electrical burnout or challenges around electrical systems, to have it within an inherently timber framed building can drive a higher risk and higher hazard. So that's something that we're really mindful of. Actually, how do we support businesses building sustainably, but also maintaining that they're kind of insurable and attractive from a risk continuity perspective. Another QBE approach here is our Build Back Better initiative, which we partner with Sedgwick's on, and that's looking at actually at the point of loss settlement. How do we settle those losses with more sustainable products, and how do we look to kind of reduce the carbon footprint for us, the loss event, and the insured going forwards? So we're highly mindful about it, but also it needs to remain insurable, and that timber framed cross-laminated timber does present as a challenge. We do see kind of innovation in construction all the time. I mean, we only have to think of aerated concrete, and that was a great idea 20-30 years ago, and obviously as a product that has a shelf life and actually was used widely in public sector buildings, and some of them have not remained structurally intact, should we say. So they may be great ideas, but everything has a shelf life. Everything has to be balanced in terms of risk, definitely.
I'm wondering how many parents listening were affected by that in September and kids being delayed back to school and things. It is a really fascinating time to be part of the insurance industry. And I think so many people outside the industry don't know what it is that we're sitting on, that we're looking at, that we're understanding, wondering about emerging risks. I think it's phenomenal. What does the future hold in terms of innovation? How do you see the next 5-10 years evolving, particularly with things like AI, which is the buzzword at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I mean, we've got very near-term innovation. just sticking on that construction theme, things like solar panels, I want to touch on that quickly as well before we get to AI. But, we look for more sustainable energy sources. Something like 4% of buildings in the UK or households in the UK have solar panels. Actually, they fundamentally change the kind of combustibility of the building. So it's a great idea, but actually we also have to be mindful about what that might present in terms of fire risk. So there's definitely still very near-term innovation that's coming, and we have to kind of have an eye on that. But also we've got to cast our eye much further into the future, and AI and the challenge there is really difficult to kind of understand and capture. I think we're just trying to work out what it means to us now as an insurance industry. It has benefits in terms of how we operate, how we process information, how we research, and how we transact insurance policies. Those are all very near-term benefits. But the future it holds is all around, I think, data usage, trend spotting, and hopefully being a really early warning challenge to some of the early warning kind of system to some of the changing risks that we see. So I think it can probably help us as well in terms of looking forwards.
It's so important, isn't it, to have your finger on the pulse there? Because you mentioned, a huge percentage of jobs that our children would do don't exist yet because we don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So having your finger on the pulse with looking at those trend changes is so important and fascinating.
Yeah, I heard someone speak recently actually and said a job for the future might be companies need an ethicist on their payroll. So somebody who kind of opines on ethical behavior of a company, because with things like AI, you need that kind of overarching view to keep the use of AI in check. So yeah, I think that kind of leans into that. What does the future hold? Another one which AI may spot for us or not is probably things like hydrogen power. Again, we talk about renewable energy and weaning ourselves off fossil fuels, and see hydrogen power as maybe part of that. But at its very core, hydrogen is odorless, it's clear, and therefore kind of presents different challenges to natural gas that we use in our homes today. It's obviously has an explosion risk to it that's probably heightened than natural gas, but also the flame burns intensely hot, but also because it's such a light gas, vertically very high. So kind of capturing that in the kind of home is actually really quite challenging, and can present different challenges definitely for kind of risk and explosion.
And you add it to sustainable building materials and lithium batteries, and we're living in a really interesting world.
Yeah.
What advice can you give to brokers about this minefield, shall we say?
Well, I think probably going back to that first opening conversation we had, Sarah, was reflecting on the last 25 years of my time in insurance. Definitely the businesses that we insure today are very different from the businesses we insured 25 years ago. And how they operate, in the risks that are presented, in where those companies are spending their innovation, and also their own capex, and kind of taking their own businesses forward. So I think proximity to the insureds is really, really important. So the advice we'd have for brokers, and it's something QBE aspire to as well, is just getting really close to the front line, understanding what's impacting our customers, where they're seeing innovation, how they're managing their risk. I mean, I can reflect on a recent case that we had at QBE, where actually the insured used to look after waste electrical recycling, so kind of just inert televisions in a warehouse, but they started to look after batteries, and unsurprisingly we saw a fire. So just being really close and proximate to the changing risks that our insureds are looking after and how they operate their business, I think is really, really important. And also there's that point that I think innovation is not just for big companies. It sounds like Gen AI and all of this is for really big multinational global concerns. It's not, all companies are innovating, all companies are impacted by this change. So yeah, I think recognise it's on the macro, but also on the more local scale, and hopefully we're set up with our regional infrastructure at QBE to kind of listen and to help.
I think the key takeaways that I've taken away from you and I could list hundreds here because I've found this really fascinating conversation, is the way the world is developing, being as close as you can to your clients literally hits every nail on the head. But I love this idea of having to have a macro as well as the micro view across everything, because the macro is changing quite quickly. From this conversation, could you give me your top takeaway that you'd like people listening to really, really think about?
I think for me, it would just be to, when we see a change with anything, is just to ask that second kind of cycle thought of, well, what does it mean? You know, it's one thing to say, well, that's a really interesting change, but what does it mean? I think that's my big takeaway in the conversation today, you know, and it's been a really broad conversation, but actually it's just like a spider's web and a ripple. It just keeps going, and there's always another impact, another change that could be affected from some of the things we've seen.
I think I might add one last key takeaway before we finish. It's a really exciting time to be part of our industry. There's so much going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, David. It's been very interesting to chat. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Sarah. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button on your chosen streaming platform and follow us on our socials, including YouTube. We hope to see you at conference in Manchester on the 15th and 16th of May. If you have any questions at all, you can find out where to contact us on BIBA Conference at bibaconference.org.uk/contact.